evening and welcome to tonight's live virtual program presented by the Howell Carnegie District Library and the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area Brighton Howell unit. I'm Brandy Tambasco, Adult Services Librarian here at the library. Thank you for joining us. I have a few housekeeping items to share before we start the presentation. Tonight's program is scheduled to run until 8 p.m. During the program, all attendees will be muted. So please share any questions you have for the presenter or report any technical issues that you may have in the chat. There will be a Q&A after the presentation. If you wish to ask a question at that time, let us know in the chat or use the raise hand option. One moment, let me just remind you. The raise hand option under reactions and we'll unmute you. We'll address as many audience questions as we can before the program ends. This program will be recorded and the recording will be available on the library's YouTube channel soon after this live virtual program. If you do not want your video on the recording, please make sure your video is turned off, that there is that red slash through the camera icon in the bottom left corner of your Zoom window. And do not forget to visit our website, www.howelllibrary.org, to discover more upcoming events from the Howell Carnegie District Library. Without further ado, I'll turn things over to Ellen Lafferty, the chairperson of our local League of Women Voters unit. Ellen. One moment, Ellen, I believe you need to unmute for us. Zoom.
I was doing so well. Good evening, everyone. So sorry about that. And thank you for joining us tonight. We're so fortunate to have the Howell Carnegie Library partner with us on these virtual events. And we wish to thank Brandy and her staff for the hard work helping us present tonight's programming. Those who are unfamiliar with the League of Women Voters, we are a political organization that encourages active participation of citizens in their government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is nonpartisan and does not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. We have two events coming up for April, and I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about those. In recognition of April being Diversity Awareness Month, we will be welcoming our guest speaker, Nicole Matthews-Creech, the president of the Livingston Diversity Council, on Tuesday, April 6th at 7 p.m. While some would say that the death of local Klan leader Robert Miles in 1992, white supremacy died with him. Unfortunately, issues of racism, heterosexism, and ableism and other types of oppression still exist here. The evening's presentation is titled, Learning from Our Past to Create a Better Future with the Livingston Diversity Council. We will learn about the council's current goals, programs, and initiatives, and how the community can support these efforts. Registration is open starting today through the Howell's Library's event calendar. I've also posted a link to this registration in the chat room below. So please, you can register through that as well. Next, the League is holding a town hall event to educate Michigan voters on the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission and the process in drawing new legislative and congressional maps. Yay, Prop 3. Leagues across the state have undertaken a widespread educational effort to help voters understand redistricting and to ensure that the Redistricting Commission is doing and being what voters have asked for citizens to draw district lines instead of legislators or special interests, and for the Commission to respect communities of interest. The virtual town hall is going to take place on Thursday, April 29th at 7 p.m. Registration isn't open yet, but most likely early May. You can follow the Howell Library's website for that information. And in the chat area tonight, I'm also going to be sharing, I did share a link to our Ann Arbor League's website. They are our mentoring league, where you'll find information how to join the League of Women Voters, or look for that donation button to help support our league in providing these programs for you, and also to continue our work in protecting voter rights and waging voter education campaigns to increase voter registration and turnout here in Livingston County and across Michigan. So I hope you look at that link and give us a follow through with that. So in honor of Women's History Month, we are honored to present our guest speaker for this evening. Dr. Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins was elected as the 15th National President of the League of Women Voters in 1998, serving 2 terms. And she also chaired the League of Women Voters Education Fund. She was the first woman of color to be elected president, and today she continues to be an advocate for civil rights, social justice, educational excellence, and stronger citizen participation in the electoral process for underrepresented populations. Her most recent book, it's titled The Untold Story of the Women of Color in the League of Women Voters, was released last year in honor of the organization's centennial celebration. Thanks to the generosity of our league members and library partners, we now have copies available through the Howell, Brighton, and Heartland Library. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins.
Thank you, Ellen, for that humbling introduction. That snapshot of what I have done in my life is important, but what's more important for us this evening is who I am, what I stand for, and the work that I will continue to do to elevate the stories of women of color to their rightful place in history. I'm in a unique position to take up this charge because as the first and only woman of color to serve as national president of the League of Women Voters in its first 100 years, my actions are based not just on research, but on my lived experiences. Many of you have had similar experiences of being the first or the only, so you can relate to the stories that I tell. The importance of this celebration of Women's History Month is paramount to us. I want to thank you, Ellen, as chair, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Arbor and the Brighton Howell unit for what you and your fellow league members do to carry on the mission of the League of Women Voters. To Brandy and the Howell Carnegie District Library, who brought together the resources to make today's event possible, and for recognizing the significance of my book, The Untold Story of Women of Color in the League of Women Voters, as a tribute to the passion and the purpose and the perseverance of women who have previously been relegated to the footnotes of history. And thank you to each of you, our allies and advocates and activists who are joining this evening, who by your presence indicate your commitment to carry on the legacy of the courageous women who I will acquaint or reacquaint you with in this historic moment in our nation. I'm honored to be a part of this evening's celebration. 20 years ago, as LWV US president, I was invited to speak at several league events in Michigan. And I most recently spoke to LWV Midland using the theme, "We Are More Than a Footnote." And at Western Michigan University and the League of Women Voters of Kalamazoo's Women of Color and Political Influence seminar that was sponsored by We Vote, We Talk. As I shared with them, Michigan is steeped in the history of the national conversation between women of color and suffragists, league leaders, and women's rights activists. Thanks to the efforts of the 2020 Centennial Commissions, to the universities and libraries for bringing to light this much overlooked segment of our history. So this evening, I bring you greetings on behalf of all of the women who have paved the way for those of us who are credited with making a difference. I chose as the organizing theme for my remarks, "Say Their Names," carrying on the legacy of history-making women. And I chose this because exactly 1 year ago, I first heard the national outcry, "Say Her Name." And it so resonated with me that I chose it for this evening's event. History is about protest, and the events of Black History Month and Women's History Month give us the forum to be heard, to pay homage to women who we can't forget lest we lose any progress that we have made. Women who remind us that their lives give meaning to ours. When I heard Say Her Name, I was in the midst of trying to shine a light on the overlooked contributions of women of color. And so I unapologetically appropriated the phrase. We use Say Her Name to remember as we continue to reckon with the systemic social and racial injustice that is a part of our nation's history. If we say their names, we remember who they are, that they lived, that their lives had meaning. Saying their names reminds us that they are not just statistics, not a number, but real people, someone's family with thoughts and feelings and triumphs and struggles. Saying their names challenges us to carry on their legacy, to continue to provide voice for them and create a new space to promote conversations that elevate their achievements. I'm obligated to use my platform during this Women's History Month 2021 to do just that for the thousands of women, particularly women of color, who have been marginalized, overlooked, or rendered invisible in the recounting of our history. So be prepared to hear a lot of names, and I guarantee you there will not be a quiz at the end. The flyer sent out to announce this event reminds us that we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before, and that we provide the shoulders for those yet to come. Angela Davis, Mary Church Terrell, Nannie Helen Burroughs, and the young garment strikers from New York City are representative of the thousands of women whose names we should know, but may not, but who from this day forward will receive their due. Thanks to Ellen, I recently looked up an article that she sent me from a Detroit news station on 8 Michigan women who changed history for the better. It was originally published on March 8th, 2019, and updated for March 8th, 2021 to celebrate International Women's Day. It took a, quote, look through the stories of some of the most impactful women in Michigan history. Rosa Parks from Detroit, Ruth Ellis from Detroit, Helen Thomas from Detroit, Sojourner Truth from Battle Creek, Agnes Mary Mansour from Detroit, Esther K. Shapiro from Detroit, Helen W. Milligan from Traverse City, and Dr. Etheline Crockett from Detroit. And while this article spotlights 8 women, there are countless women who have changed the landscape from all types of backgrounds and areas, and many of them in the ranks of the more than 300 women who are honored in the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame. These are the women who have come to our attention and are receiving public recognition, and rightfully so. But if you look more closely, you'll see that there are so many more history-making women in our everyday lives. History can be made by anyone. My focus is on the untold stories and the unknown heroes. Let's say their names, remember their faces, lift up their stories, make a commitment to carrying on their legacy while leaving our own mark, honoring their passion and their purpose and their perseverance, and carrying on their legacy of resistance and resilience and renewal. Again, women leaders of the 21st century stand tall because they stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before. We must honor these history-making women during Women's History Month and every month by remembering their names and carrying on their legacy. So let's stop for a moment and talk a little bit about why we celebrate Women's History Month. Women's History Month follows Black History Month, and Black History Month was started as Negro History Week in February of 1926 and became officially recognized under President Gerald R. Ford as Black History Month in February of 1971. So I'm the bridge between Black History Month and Women's History Month. The Black women's battle for the ballot box cannot be told enough, not in Black History Month and not in Women's History Month. Both months afford the opportunity we need to honor the past and acknowledge the advancements made, recognizing that we still have work to do. Women's History Month had its origins as a national celebration in 1981, when Congress passed Public Law 9728, which authorized and requested the president to proclaim the week beginning March 7th, 1982, as Women's History Week. And throughout the next 5 years, Congress continued to pass joint resolutions designating a week in March as Women's History Week. In 1987, after being petitioned by the National Women's History Project, Congress passed Public Law 100-9, which designated the month of March 1987 as Women's History Month. Between 1988 and 1994, Congress passed additional resolutions requesting and authorizing the president to proclaim March of each year as Women's History Month. And since 1995, presidents have issued a series of annual proclamations designating the month of March as Women's History Month. And these proclamations celebrate the contributions women have made to the United States and recognize specific achievements women have made over the course of American history. I was curious about what the White House proclamation of this year would say. So the White House proclamation on Women's History Month, issued March 1st, 2021, highlights the unique challenges of all women, but specifically addresses the challenges of women of color. This is different than previous White House proclamations. Should we hazard a guess why? Let me share with you a few excerpts from the 5-page document. And I quote, "Throughout American history, women and girls have made vital contributions, often in the face of discrimination and undue hardship. Courageous women marched for and won the right to vote, campaigned against injustice, shattered countless barriers, and expanded the possibilities of American life. Far too often, their heroic efforts and their stories have gone untold, especially the millions of Black women, immigrant women, and others from diverse communities who have strengthened America across every generation. In our current moment of crisis, women continue to lead. During Women's History Month, let us honor the accomplished visionary women who have helped build our country, including those whose contributions have not been adequately recognized and celebrated. And let's pay tribute to the trailblazers from the recent and distant past for daring to envision a future for which no past precedent existed, and for building a nation of endless possibilities for all of its women," close quote. I know that reflecting on centuries of history in the short amount of time that we have this evening is a daunting task, but we're up to the task. I usually try to make my presentations both inspirational and aspirational, but there's no need to give an inspirational speech at this moment in history. The events of the day provide enough inspiration for us. So I want to engage you in an aspirational conversation, acknowledging a proud history of women's progress and drawing parallels with the universal themes of the struggles of race and gender that still exist today. A year ago, everything changed. The way we do business, the way we travel, the way we shop, the way we engage with each other, sometimes for the good, the recognition and enhanced empowerment of women, and sometimes for the bad, a reawakening to the lingering challenge of systemic racial and social injustice. A year ago, we should have been focusing on the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, and the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And while many commemorations continued in alternate formats, they did not receive the total recognition that they would have had we not been engulfed in fighting a global pandemic and a reckoning with our painful history. Here we are in this new year, reminded that our new normal presents us with unforeseen opportunities to transform our thinking on how we value and celebrate each other. In 2020, we turned out to make our voices heard in all aspects of our lives. My mission is now, and always has been, to give that same loud voice to women whose stories have yet to be told as we recount history. The centennial commemorations of 2020 in many instances relied on bias as constructed, repeating a narrative and not questioning or pushing back. So I'm challenging you this evening to push back. And you're going to do that by accepting responsibility for saying their name, remembering and honoring those who we know by expanding and exploring our knowledge base to include those who we may not know, and carrying on their legacy, a call to action, because we know that there is still work to be done. We must not be comfortable with just remembering and honoring. We must carry on their legacy by taking action. To that end, I'm looking forward to the questions and answers that will take place at the end of the presentation, which will allow us to focus not just on what I want you to know, but actually on what you want to know. So let's get started. You thought we already had. Black History Month and Women's History Month are a time when we attempt to correct the omission of the contributions of people of color, of women of color, and women from historic narratives. The unabridged history that we must embrace is messy, it's uncomfortable, and sometimes unbelievable, particularly on issues of race. But from acknowledging these unpleasant truths can come a brighter future. The history that has been omitted gives context to this current historic moment of social and racial unrest. Black History Month and Women's History Month celebrations provide the perfect opportunity to appreciate the full history and have the hard conversations about doing better. So this is more than a celebration. It's an exercise in discovery of contributions forgotten, erased, or concealed. Excuse me 1 second, having technical problems. We're engaged in more than just an intellectual exercise. This is about real people, real thoughts, real lives. Let's say their names, remember their faces, and lift up their stories. If we don't do this, it's easy to forget them, what they stand for, and their legacy to us. Anniversaries and remembrances are important. Celebrations and anniversaries are about telling and remembering stories. And stories are used to inspire us, to inform us, and to affirm us. Stories make a life once lived real. Untold stories, as the White House proclamation states, leaves us with a gap that sometimes makes us repeat the part of history from which we should have learned. We want our heroes to be perfect, and that is only human nature. But history reminds us that they are just people. These past few years have been historic, with the increased number of women finding their voice and successfully shattering glass ceilings along the way. 142 women hold seats in the US Congress, which is comprising 26.5% of the 535 members. And we have a female vice president. These are precedent-setting times in Michigan, because Michigan has become a national model for its historic statewide leadership team with a female governor, secretary of state, and attorney general. This is certainly grounds for celebration, but there are important lessons to be learned from these women and the women upon whose shoulders they stand. The passage of the 19th Amendment was the largest expansion of voting rights in the history of the United States. Though women of color were there too from the beginning of the fight, for them, the 19th Amendment was not the universal celebration it was reported to be. Winning the vote for women required 72 years of advocacy. But for women of color, it required an additional 45 years of advocacy with the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that extends to this day. Who were these women? Can we say their names? Can we see their faces? They were educators and orators and authors, sociologists, political organizers, historians, missionaries, businesswomen, social activists, wives, mothers, sisters, daughters. We carry on their legacy, the legacy of Sojourner Truth, of Ida B. Wells Barnett, of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, of Addie Waits Hunton, of Anna Julia Cooper, Nannie Helen Burroughs, Fanny Jackson Coppin, Hetty Tilghman, Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, Delilah Beasley, Mary Church Terrell, Dr. Dorothy Height, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, the Honorable Shirley Chisholm, Fannie Lou Hamer, the Honorable Barbara Jordan, Rosa Parks, C. Dolores Tucker, Mildred R. Madison, and Barbara Blaine. How amazing these women were to navigate the obstacles of both gender and race. To be a history maker as a woman of color meant a series of compromises and collaboration and controversy, of resistance and resilience and renewal. Think about what it was like for these women, what it was like for me as the first, feeling a part of something bigger than yourself, fighting the good fight. In moments like this, people get excited about what has been accomplished, forgetting to acknowledge that the accomplishment may not mean the same for everyone. While I focus on the contributions of women of color who face unique challenges, we should also say the names of other women who supported and championed their cause. As was highlighted in the New York Times supplement, How American Women Won the Right to Vote, that was published on August 16th of 2020. And I quote, "Suffragists were Black and white, Asian and Latinx, immigrant and indigenous, queer and straight, and everything else. Suffragists came from the big cities and the small towns. They came from the coast and the heartland, and every walk of life. The movement drew diverse communities into its struggle for a more equal democracy." Close quote. So 100 years after the ratification of the most expansive voting legislation in the United States, we are still struggling with ensuring enfranchisement equality. Women who helped continue the fight, women like Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman US Supreme Court Justice, Elizabeth Dole, the first woman Secretary of Transportation, Vanessa L. Williams, the first African-American Miss America, Geraldine Ferraro, the first female vice presidential nominee representing a major American political party, Dr. Lenora Fulani, the first African-American woman presidential candidate on a ballot in all 50 states, and of course, Hillary Clinton. These names are just the tip of the iceberg. So indulge me, if you please. What I want you to do for the next 21 seconds in honor of the 21st century and 2021 Women's History Month celebration, think about the women whose names you can add to this list. Women who have been important to your journey, women whose legacy you're living. Think about the seed that they have sown into your life and why they are important to you. Your 21 seconds starts now. Say their names. Okay, if you're like me, the names you said out loud were the people who shaped you and continue to shape you, the women who show you a vision of what can be. Did you add any unlikely women leaders? Did you add your own name to the list? We don't have to be silent anymore. This is our time. Time to correct historic records so that all women are not invisible. Time to tell the stories that give us strength. We must preserve this rich history. We must have realistic portrayals. We can't continue to idolize, nor can we allow others to continue to demonize. We need to write, W-R-I-T-E, and write, R-I-G-H-T, history. We can talk about it. We must talk about it. We need to build monuments in our heads and our hearts, not just in or near our buildings. We need to continue to advocate to have Harriet Tubman's likeness on the $20 bill. We need to support Vice President Kamala D. Harris and the role model that she has become for all women and girls. We have said their names. Now, what can we do to honor them? What would they have us do? What is their legacy? The generations of history makers and movement makers. I want to share with you a quote from Shirley Chisholm, and she said, "I believe that women have a special contribution to make to help bring order out of chaos in our nation, because they have special qualities of leadership which are greatly needed today. And these qualities are patience and tolerance and perseverance, which have developed in many women because of suppression. And if we can add to these qualities a reservoir of information about the techniques of community action, we can indeed become effective harbingers for change." And she said that in 1970. Every generation experiences a transformational moment where change is made through commitment. For the suffragists, it was 1920. For me, it was 1968. For many of you, it will be 2020 or 2021. What I learned from my transformational moment was that change does not always occur with a single event or even a series of events, but an ongoing commitment. And that commitment results in power. Let me share with you a glimpse of what that power looks like. In March of 1933, Frances Perkins became the first female cabinet member as labor secretary. In June of 1938, federal law was set that said there must be equal minimum wage for both sexes. In February of 1963, Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystique was published. In July of 1964, Congress outlawed job discrimination based on gender. In June of 1965, states could no longer outlaw contraception in marriages. In September of 1968, feminists congregated in Atlantic City to demonstrate against beauty contests. In August of 1970, more than 50,000 women across the country marched for equal rights. In June of 1972, Title IX opened opportunities for female athletes in federally funded schools. In January of 1973, the US Supreme Court rules that a woman has the right to terminate pregnancy. In October of 1974, Congress made it illegal to deny credit cards based on sex or marital status. In October of 1978, Congress bars employers from firing women for becoming pregnant. In September of 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor was sworn in as Supreme Court's first female justice. In January of 2009, federal laws made it easier for victims of pay discrimination to file complaints. In January of 2016, all military positions, including combat postings, became available to women. In July of 2016, Hillary Clinton became the first woman nominated for president by a major party. In October of 2017, more than 53,000 tweets and 12 million Facebook posts called out sexual harassment in the hashtag #MeToo. And on November 3rd, 2020, Kamala Harris is the first woman elected Vice President of the United States. We are witness to the confirmations of the most diverse House of Representatives and cabinet, with a number of firsts being confirmed. We need to honor these history-making women during Women's History Month by remembering their names and carrying on their legacy every month. The women's marches that started in 2016 and the protests of 2020 have shown us the importance of putting a face to people, to saying their names not only as a remembrance, but as a tribute to the importance of their lives, becoming the effective harbingers of change that will shape the future. With passion, purpose, and perseverance, today's women lead the protests, influence policy, get elected to office in numbers previously unseen, make the hard decisions as elected and appointed officials, as police captains, judges, prosecutors, mayors, congresswomen, senators, community activists, doctors who contributed to the discovery of the vaccination for COVID-19. And we vote. On June 16, 1998, I was elected the 15th president of the League of Women Voters of the United States, a small but prestigious group. I knew then that I stood on the shoulders of the women of color who provided the foundation for me, especially the women in my life. And at that moment, I thought about my mother, who we had buried the day before, and my grandmother, who at 95 lived to see her hope for the future realized. Neither could have imagined such an achievement in the segregated society in which they were raised. They represent women who labored but never received public recognition for their efforts to achieve equality and voting rights. And this is what started my journey to discover the names and contributions of the other women upon whose shoulders I stand. So I come before you this evening, now more than 20 years since my election, armed with the stories of the women upon whose shoulders I do stand, understanding the power and the totality of our story, our collective story. I'm encouraged that long-needed conversations are being had. So yes, there has been change. No, we are not where we should be or need to be. Yes, the opportunity still exists to continue to make progress in all aspects of our life. No, it does not happen without leadership from dedicated, ordinary people whose effects on our lives are extraordinary. Needless to say, we live in interesting times, times in which race and gender are still at the forefront of our conversations in society. There, however, is a silver lining in all that is occurring. More people are learning about democracy, rethinking priorities. And in this 2021 recognition of Women's History Month, we have a renewed sense of hope as we continue to navigate through this new normal. We must have a renewed sense of commitment to honoring each other. I am a believer in the power of our story, but this conversation is bigger than just one person, one day, 1 month, or one moment in time. So what do we do? Women's History Month is the perfect time to begin to commit to correct the egregious oversight of history and move forward. How we tell our story is about power. Women's History Month affirms our desire to not be edited out of existence. And as you may have discerned by now, I am unapologetic about raising uncomfortable conversations. There are consequences to being comfortable. 2021 is a year that is testing our resolve as individuals and as a nation. It's challenging the progress we have made and daring us to do something about it. We must accept that dare by acknowledging our past as a prelude to our future, by telling the truth and using lessons learned to do better, by moving forward, by imagining the unimaginable, particularly when it comes to gender and race awareness, by reclaiming the power in our complete story, by recapturing the power of this moment. The events of 2020 and early 2021 remind us that social injustice, gender and racial inequality, election integrity, and informed civic engagement are all a part of a legacy that we still have to carry. These current crises remind us that we have made it through adversity before, and using the lessons learned, we can make it through adversity again. Times like these define who we are, how we carry on the legacy of the women upon whose shoulders we stand. 8 days ago on March 8th, we celebrated International Women's Day with the theme, Choose to Challenge. So today we celebrate the life and legacy of women past, present, and future who chose to challenge, who have stood up with whose voices we hear loud and clear in the distance and near, and who remind us of the necessity to keep moving. Every time we tell the untold story of women of color whose contributions have been ignored, every time we celebrate women's political power, every time we elect a woman to office, every time we expose social and racial injustice and go about the business of eradicating it, every time we make a change for ourselves and our communities and our nation, every time we vote, as we did in the most recent elections, every time we make an intentional decision to make this world a better place, every time we protest or advocate for what Barbara Jordan called an America as good as its promise, every time we make courage, more contagious than fear. We move beyond celebrations of the moment and we make it a movement. We choose to challenge. We accept responsibility to ensure that history accurately reflects and honors the contributions of all, that the legacy we are charged to carry on is actualized, that legacy lives on in the lives of women current and yet to come. That is what we are called to do as we move forward. Say their names, remember their names, lift up their stories, carry on their legacy. It is our duty. The centennial celebrations are over, but not the fight. These women cannot and must not be forgotten. To the unsung heroes who risked it all to make democracy work, to protest, to lobby, to vote, to those of us who are witnesses to history, we are entrusted with the legacy of the suffrage movement, the women's movement, the civil rights movement, and we're challenged to do better. Let's do just that. Let our voices be the voices of reason in 2020 and beyond. Let's educate. Let's participate in numbers previously unseen. Let's talk to each other. More importantly, let's listen to each other. As we celebrate the dawn of a new beginning, let's link arms virtually until we can do it in person, to honor those who risked their lives and gave their lives, whose legacies we must uphold. Every grandmother and mother, aunt, sister, daughter, grandfather, father, uncle, son, brother, partner, and any other non-conforming pronoun, and recognize that we are forever linked in the pursuit of justice. We can give ourselves permission to celebrate a flawed history, knowing that we can create a new narrative. Let's lean into this new normal and a productive future of access and inclusion. I am an eternal optimist, and I continue to be inspired by your energy and commitment. We are at a very different place on our journey as this nation enters this new year, but this is just the beginning. I'm going to share with you a quote from Mary Church Terrell, and she said, "No people need ever despair whose women are fully aroused to the duties which rest upon them and are willing to shoulder responsibilities which they alone can successfully assume." So at this Women's History Month celebration of the League of Women Voters Ann Arbor area, Brighton Howell Unit, and Howell Carnegie District Library, in this new normal, on March 16th, 2021, I am issuing a challenge to each of you on behalf of all women who came before us and chose to make this world a better place in whatever way they could. It is now time to use our voices loud and clear to say their names, lift up their stories, carry on their legacy. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you will do. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this evening's conversation. I can't wait to see what the future holds. Let's talk.
Thank you, Carolyn. This is an opportunity right now to ask Dr. Jefferson Jenkins any questions you have. And I'm going to start by saying that 26% of the House of Representatives is okay, but less than 50% is not acceptable. And I had a great article from a friend shared about how many countries are going into quotas. They won't accept less than 50% quota of women to men in their legislature. And just a comment I want to make on that, and not only remembering the names of those who brought these women to the ballot, but also encouraging those same daughters, sisters, neighbors, friends to run for those offices. And I'm proud to stand with friends who have taken that plunge and have run and successfully, been elected to office. I'm really pleased how time is changing for the better. If anybody has a question for Carolyn, please raise your hand. Maybe Brandy can help us with that. Any questions or comments whatsoever?
We don't have any questions yet in the chat. I'm monitoring that. So please do share them there or raise your hand if you'd like to be unmuted and to turn on your video so you can ask Carolyn directly. We did have Kathy and Claire give you some kudos there, Carolyn, with a nice clapping response. So thank you, ladies. Appreciate that. It was a great presentation. Let's see. I did wonder, Carolyn, how long did it take you to work on your book from your idea of getting that together until you were able to get it out last year?
Thank you. That's an interesting question. I would say 20 years. It was 20 years in the making, and I kind of put it aside. When I was first elected president in 1998, Dr. Rosalind Terborg Penn had come out with a book on Black suffragists, and I was surprised because as I looked around the league, I wanted to know where were the women of color. I didn't see them in any of the historic documents that were being displayed. I didn't see them in any of the written history. And so I committed at that moment in that year to write a book for the 100th anniversary and kind of put it aside and started collecting phone numbers, which is interesting. Mildred Madison, who actually lives in Michigan, who was my mentor in Ohio, gave me her phone number. When I called her, she said, her daughter said, "Where'd you get this number? It's 20 years old." I said, "Yeah, she gave it to me 20 years ago when I said I was going to write this book." And so the actual writing of the book took 3 years because I spent a lot of time in the Library of Congress. One of the things that happens with organizations like the League, that is a federated organization and that does not have a historian or an archivist, is that the only information is what people decide to keep. So there are gaps in the documents. There are gaps in what people felt was important to keep. There are, as all of us do, we keep the things that make us look good and don't necessarily want the things that don't make us look good. So it was 2 years of straight research. And then I had the opportunity, the cover of the book has a picture of Sandra Epps as the woman of color on that cover, and it's from Flint, Michigan. She actually is from Flint, Michigan, and she's 85. I also had the opportunity to do an interview with Dr. Josie Johnson, who was the first Black National Board member appointed in 1968, and talked with her about her experiences being the first National Board member. And so I was able to do some oral histories that were far more important to me than a lot of the written history, because I know that the written history is what we want it to be. And that's just true of any history. I would encourage and have encouraged local and state leagues to start doing their own digging. For instance, I did not know, and St. Louis has done this. St. Louis at one point had 300 members of color in their league. They had the largest Black league, but also the League of Women Voters embraced having colored leagues, which is totally contradictory to their bylaws that they would have segregated leagues, but that's what they chose to do. And those segregated leagues were in California, St. Louis, and one that was interesting to me was in Tacoma, Washington. And so I had to do some research to find out why there were so many women of color in Tacoma, and found that the shipyards there actually did recruiting in the South for workers. And so there was a large African-American community there. So it's an ongoing experience. One of the things that was a disadvantage is that if things are not in public domain, I didn't get the rights to use it. Because I actually have more materials than what were published, because people don't want, I have actual letters and things, and people don't want to give up the rights to that because sometimes it doesn't show them in a good light, but it was what they said. So in another 50 years, we can see a whole new book with with some other interesting dynamics attached to it. So that was a long answer to your short. Sorry.
That's great. Thank you. It's wonderful culmination of 20 years of an idea. So we appreciate you sharing that with us. We did have Claire raise her hand, so I'm going to ask her to unmute. We have another couple questions after we get to Claire. Claire, are you able to?
Yep, I'm unmuted.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Brandy. Hey, Dr. Jenkins, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I think one of the things that I found most interesting tonight was asking us to spend the 20 seconds to reflect on women that have had an impact. And you know what? When it comes to this topic, my brain was pretty empty because it made me realize that there have not been a lot of women through this journey to look up to. We have been the journey. And it kind of surprised me. I mean, I have a lot of women to look up to for other reasons, but when it comes to this journey of women's rights, yeah, and I'm going to think about that for a long time because I think that it sounds like we may be close to the same age. I'm 64 and we've been on the forefront of a lot of it. Now, maybe it's a little different when you're a woman of color and, you know, some of the civil rights activities ahead of time. So thank you. I thought that was a very interesting thing that I learned about myself this evening.
Well, I thank you. I just wrote down my quote of the evening. We have been the journey. And so when I use that, I will give you credit. I always make sure that I give credit, but I will be using that. I thank you very much. But you're right. Oftentimes though, Claire, one of the things that I say to a lot of younger women is we tend to overlook the people who are closest to us and push them in that direction. And when Ellen was talking about getting women to run for office, one of the platforms I had when I was league president was running and winning. We wanted more women to run for office, but people don't see themselves in that place. And so sometimes it's up to us to make sure that they see themselves in that place. And so we can help do that. And you're right. As I say that, I'm tired. You know, it's time for somebody else to start doing this, but we can't let go of it until we can pass it on to somebody else. So.
Well, yeah. And I think that one of the things you mentioned too is, you know, we learned a little bit of a lesson. We dropped the ball a little bit and it came back to bite us pretty bad in 2016. So, you know, it's a fight that's ongoing.
Yeah, well, and thank you so much for my quote for the evening.
Thank you very much, Claire. We did have Lori ask in the chat for your suggestions on how to recruit more women to run for office.
So there are a number of programs, Lori, that help women prepare to run for office that will push women out front. One of the biggest problems that women have, though, is in fundraising. For whatever reason, the research has shown that women are uncomfortable in asking for money, number one. But number two, they don't have access to the conversations where the big money is. And so in my generation, it was golf. And so everybody had to learn because all the decisions were made on the golf course and women weren't there. So if women aren't in the room when those conversations are being had, then we get left out of those conversations. And then the third thing that I would say is we need to support each other and stop tearing each other down. And that support can be as basic as babysitting for somebody or taking meals to their home or doing whatever it takes to make sure that they have the availability and the opportunity to be out when they need to be out and about. But until society changes, we are still, even though we've made a lot of progress, we are still role driven. And the perception of roles sometimes hinder us. And so I would just say that, I don't want to use Google, but there are a number of mentoring programs in every state. And the League of Women Voters have programs that help women decide whether they want to run and win and how they run and win. And I just did a seminar for the Eastern Caribbean. They have a whole institute for women running and winning. And so those resources are out there. You'll have to put in a little legwork because I don't have them offhand, but they are available to you. And just see yourself in that place and make it happen.
Very inspirational. I like that. I'm definitely going to remember that visually. Kathy did ask something to follow up on this. Mary Jo, we will get to your question, but I did want to ask, Kathy asked, are you familiar with Emily's List?
Yes.
And okay, fantastic. Because when you're saying about the resources, I'm like,
Right.
I bet that's probably, and she asked,
I mean, they have scripted materials, packaged materials that you can just look down a checklist and see if this is for you or not. I mean, so you could get that information off the internet or off their website, and then in the privacy of your own home, then make that conversation and then reach out to them, and they will absolutely support you.
wonderful. Thank you. I just put a link to that in the chat. So if
Yeah, it was one of the interesting things, but not, I think I was not surprised by it, because when it came to issues of race, the league only had positions when they were forced to have positions. Their fallback was that we were a federated organization and that local and state leagues needed to be able to make decisions that impacted their own communities. The local and state leagues, on the other hand, were asking for guidance from the National League about what to do. So and so where that decision was, because leagues help people in the community. So you're going to do what's best for your community. And there was no national accountability. Eleanor Roosevelt wrote a New York Times editorial calling the league out on its hypocrisy. And bravo for her. And so even after that, they did not. And so the 10 years between the Brown decision and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, the league didn't have a position and wasn't going to, and came late to the party because the response was, we don't want to upset our Southern leagues. Well, newsflash, some of the Northern leagues were just as segregated as the Southern leagues. So yeah, don't be surprised. You would probably be surprised at the other things that I wasn't able to put in the book. So just know that this organization can, and we will do better, because now we know that we need to do better. And up until this point, all of the stories of the league have been romanticized and sanitized versions of who we thought we were. But every self-study of the organization has told us since 1929 that we are a white woman's organization. And we're okay. Why are we okay to be that? In this demographic society that has changed, the demographics in which we live, why are we okay to be that? And we're not anymore. So I'm glad to say that the new leadership has recognized that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a priority, to the point where they even put it in the bylaws. And I was so pleased by that, because now there is accountability. So.
All right. Okay, Dr. Jenkins, thank you so much. Our league itself is looking at that DEI lens, it's called, and just sitting, listening, and learning, just like we did tonight. And we thank you for everything tonight. As far as women running for office, I just have to say myself, I've run for office for our union president, and it took a lot of courage. And this just seems to think some women might think smart women, some selfless women, and so I hope we encourage all women to run for more office, so we get to that 50%. I want to thank you for everything tonight. It was, as always, it was an opportunity, a great opportunity to listen and learn this evening. And we cannot begin to honor those incredible, accomplished women that came before us and brought us to where we are today. We are definitely not far enough. We have a long way to go, but it starts with a step. I want to thank also the Howell Library for co-hosting, and our time is just about up. I'm going to turn it over to Brandy, and she's going to give us those last minute housekeeping comments and how you can watch this, the recording of this evening at a later date. Brandy?
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for sharing your knowledge and the history of these noble women and our progress and celebrating Women's History Month with us this evening. It's very important. I'm so glad that you're able to share it with us. Thanks again to our partner, the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area, Brighton Howell area unit, for making this evening possible. And thank you all for attending tonight's program. We hoped you enjoyed it. Based on the comments we're getting in the chat, people very much did, and there's lots of thanks heading your way, Carolyn. So I hope that you feel surrounded by that. This program, as Ellen mentioned, as I said earlier, is being recorded. It will be up on the library's YouTube channel as soon as we can get it processed. I will send out an email to everybody who registered, so you can click on a link and watch away. That will be available for people who are unable to attend as well tonight. So share far and wide. Please take a few minutes to tell us what you thought about this program in the short event. I'll also be sharing that in the follow-up email. And as Ellen mentioned earlier, our next League of Women Voters and Howell Library Partnership Program will be on Tuesday, April 6th. That's just 3 short weeks away at 7 p.m. It's going to be with the Livingston Diversity Council. Nicole Matthews-Creech is the president. There's a link to register for that in the chat as well. Visit our website, howelllibrary.org, to discover more upcoming events from the Howell Carnegie District Library, and visit lwvbrightonhowellarea.org to find out more about our local League of Women Voters unit. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.